guys? Tim Halstead here with another episode of DragBoss Garage. Now we have an interview with the famous, world famous Tricky.
Famous?
From Mansueto back in the day. How are you, Tricky?
Mate, I'm doing well. I don't know about famous. But,
oh, yeah, you're famous.
Oh, great. Maybe in my own lunchbox.
I'm trying to think the first time that I ever met you or came in contact with you was on a video when you were doing the T-Rex heads back in 2012 with Extreme Magazine. You remember that?
Yes, we done a dyno.
The 451 Windsor, I think.
That's correct, yes. Yep.
And you
was
were
back
doing
at the old shop.
the CHI 3V to the CNC port to the T-Rex port.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
That thing was making I think it made like 815 or something.
It's been a long time now. Yeah, it's been a long time since we done that. That's when we done the overview of the ports in Mastercam.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I got here 790 to 803 horsepower that thing made.
Yes. Yep. That was a nice motor.
Those cylinder heads. So that's the first time I ever heard of you guys.
Right, okay. Okay, cool.
I was just getting into building, I think that was 12. So I was really kind of getting into building a bigger stroker than what I've used to.
Yeah, okay.
And a better cylinder head. And that's when I started to read about CHI, AFD, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay. Okay. That was a big 3 days. I don't know if it was 2 or 3 days. I think it was 2 days. That was a lot of work to do those 3 back to back. Hey, hello. Oh, I actually shouldn't be saying hello. I should say g'day.
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 He's from Australia, right?
How are you going? Good?
Yeah.
And how old are you two crazy nuts?
5. I'm gonna be 6 soon. Cause it's almost gonna be my birthday in 7 days.
What are you getting for your presents?
I don't know. I asked, but I'm trying to think.
She's trying to think.
I know. I love those.
How old are you, Is?
9, almost 10.
Yep. 9, almost 10.
Almost 10. And the little one is 5 going on 15.
Yeah. Yep. And here's my wife. She's only 30 going on 25.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you all.
Goodbye.
Nice to meet you too.
Goodbye.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Yep.
See you later, mate.
That's
She
their
said,
attention
see you later,
span.
mate. Hello, mate. It's nice to talk to you today.
Hello, May. It's nice to talk to you today.
They want me to learn how to speak Australian with an Australian accent.
Oh, well, I don't even know how to speak Australian accent.
You see? You don't even know how to do it. Well, what in there? It's a good day.
Good day, mate. Yes.
Hey, mate.
You know what? I was in San Francisco. I was on a tram.
Yep.
And this is going back, 15, 20 years ago now. I think probably more. Probably 25, 30 years ago. And a guy come up to me and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you guys are from Australia."
Use
and
guys.
I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, you are too. And is that what we sound like?" You know what I mean? Like, that's terrible. Like, that's really bad.
That's funny.
But you don't realize what you sound like until I got used to the American accent everywhere we went. And I wasn't hearing the Australian accent.
I'll go bye.
I know, but okay.
He reminds me of my little one.
They're only little once, boy. And they
Yes, I know. And they definitely want to make an impression while they're little.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth, isn't it?
Oh yes, definitely. All right, we just want to say hi.
All right. We'll just be talking for about 10 or 15 minutes.
That's
and I'll
fine.
be done. All right, you guys going to
Nice
bed?
to meet you all.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Elena, can you say bye?
Bye.
Say bye, Tricky.
Bye, Tricky Worm. Oh, wait, no, that's a worm thing.
Oh, jeez.
There you go.
Bye. Here, Elena, put this.
Well, on my last trip to America, when I was with John Rowlands at Wilson Manifolds.
Oh yeah. Okay.
His daughter couldn't say Tricky, so she was calling me Turkey.
It's just Trick, right? Tristan Triccas.
Yes, and everyone just calls me Tricky, and but she couldn't get that trick out, so it was just Turkey. Everywhere we went, she said, "Where's Turkey? Where's Turkey?"
That's good. Well, I'm glad they got to come out and meet you. They were dying to say hi to someone from Australia.
No, definitely. If you guys come out here for a holiday, make sure you organise and come and stay with us here.
Oh yeah, that would be a blast, man.
Definitely, we'll have some fun.
All the constables would be out that night, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. So what else you got for me?
Now, we talked about oil. I did a big video on the problem with the Cleveland oiling, which is a non-priority main. And I went through all that stuff and explained it all that. And we had talked before, and you kind of laughed and chuckled and said, geez, Tim, I don't know why you make it so complicated. I don't look at it that complicated when we're talking about lifter bushings or, the auxiliary oil line or, crank system, all this stuff. Yep. What's your views on oil system for Cleveland?
To be honest, you're talking about bronze lifter bores. That's a definite if you do have issues. And when I say issues, you got worn lifter bores. Right. I understand. If the lifter bores are within spec, and you're running a solid roller, and the oil hole for the push rod is above the oil gallery around the other side or whatever, and you got a little tiny 2 or 3 thou groove in it. Okay. That's your oil control to your top end. Because it can't get past that little notch. So
in the push rod, you're saying?
In the lifter, on the side of the lifter.
Right, I know what you're talking about. Yes, yes.
I put a little notch, a little 2-3 thou deep notch.
Yep,
and I've seen that. I use that to control my oil flow to the top end.
Okay.
And I did the same thing on my nitrous motor. The bushings didn't have a direct oil flow to them. So we machined a 3 thou deep groove in the side of the lifter to allow oil to pass to the bushing all the time.
Got it.
So I didn't burn the bushes out in the lifters.
Now, they used to just put like a 60 thousandths or 30 thousandths hole in the bushing, right?
Yes, to restrict it.
You could do that too, right?
You can. But I'd rather see, how do I explain it? I'd rather see the full oil hole.
Yes.
So you got full flow everywhere.
Yes.
And then just use the notch in the lifter to control the oil flow to the top end.
And not have anything, no hole in the bushing whatsoever other than that lifter.
Yes, other than the big oil hole all the way through.
Okay.
Yep. And
Got it.
Yeah, the right bearing clearances, the right oil pump. Of course, you can clean up the oil galleries.
Sure.
Which you obviously do.
Yeah.
But I've never put restrictors in. I tried to back in the early day. But with a Cleveland, you can only restrict one side.
Correct.
Yep. So then that pushes more oil out the other side.
Okay.
So all right. I found even on the dyno that it would breathe in the other rocker cover more. It filled the other rocker cover up with oil more. So whilst it was restricting one side, it was pushing more oil to the other side.
Got it.
So, yeah, we tried everything. We even tried soldering the bottom of the push rods.
Okay.
Then we were told by someone in America to put like a cleaning bristle up the middle of the push rod.
I heard that Glidden did that too.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that when you see the cleaning bristle coming out the top of the rocker.
Yep. All right. I got it.
It's not working. So we tried all that.
What about restrictor cam bearings?
No. I always have had the cam bearings installed with the hole at the bottom.
Okay.
So the load of the rocker gear is pushing down on the camshaft, which is blocking the hole. And that makes the bearing last the longest because the oil's trying to force its way out of the bottom.
Now, what I have in that motor that you were looking at before are restrictor cam bearings, which have a channel on the outside. So when the oil comes up, it hits that channel, has to go around the circumference of the bearing, which restricts the oil.
Yep.
And prevents it from, keeps the oil in the bottom end, so to speak, restricts it.
Yes. Why do you do that? Is there a reason? To keep the oil in the bottom end?
Just to help keep it at the mains.
Okay.
Try to keep the mains fed as much as possible.
Yeah, okay. Just go with it.
You know what? That's exactly what I say. If things work for you, do it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. Change your plan.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. And I've been running a high volume pump, and I used to run big clearances, 3,000, 3,500 with 2050, a 9-quart pan. That's how I ran for years. Now that I met this other guy, he's like, listen, you don't need those big bearing clearances anymore. Let's cut them down. And I went down to like 27, 28.
Yes.
I still have the high volume pump because that's in my brain. But I think what I'm going to do is test the next motor is go with a standard volume and see how it works. With an auxiliary line, the auxiliary line, I mean.
I used an auxiliary line once.
Yep.
And I had more bearing issues.
Really?
Look, it doesn't make sense because pressure should be equal at all points. But it just didn't make sense. But with that oil line on, we hurt the bearings.
Okay.
With the oil line off, we didn't.
See, the way I look at it is that oil's going down through, it's decreasing flow every time it goes up and comes back down. It might start out at 80 pounds at the pump, but by the time you get to the end, or the right side, you're looking at what? Maybe 60. Then it has to cross over to the other side to oil. Now over by the other side on the left at the end, you might have like 40, Yeah.
Oh, I agree with you there, but we just had problems.
Okay. I'm going to try. I mean, I've never ran it either. I've never had any problem. And like if it works, you just run with it. But I look at the way that diagram of the oil flow, it's got to be a win-win situation. So I got to at least try it and see.
I think it was Darren Morgan's stepdad.
Okay, Kip,
that told us to try the oil line.
Okay.
And in the end, we ended up finding out the problem was the crankshaft. It was a cross-drilled crank.
Got it.
Yep. So we got rid of the oil line. We were running about 283 on the bearings.
Yeah.
Standard volume pump and like 60 pounds, 65 pounds with 10 inches of vacuum. And we never ever had a problem again.
Nice. What about oil weight? What's your thoughts on oil weight? The old 2050 conventional stuff or Brad Penn semi-synthetic?
Well, now we always run semi-synthetic.
Okay.
We tried back in the day running thinner oil and running it colder, maybe, and a bit less oil pressure. We never ever made as much power and we never had as good a ring seal as when we ran a 2050 oil and we heated it up. So
like what?
If you ran like a 1030 oil or a 530,
sure,
and you ran it at 120 Fahrenheit, you might have 60 pounds oil pressure, you'll make X amount of power. So I should write it down so I can tell you. So a 1030 at 100 F with 60 PSI, let's just say it made 900 and it had 8 inches of vacuum in the sump.
Got it.
When we ran a 2050 oil, we ran it at 170, 180 Fahrenheit. We would get, say, 65 PSI oil pressure, another 5 pounds. We would make another 10, 15 horsepower. But we would notice the vacuum in the sump was like 12, 13 inches.
Like 12? It went from 8.5 to 12?
Yep. So we found the ring seal was a lot better with a thicker oil that was heated up than a thin oil cold.
Okay.
And I done that.
Your Fahrenheit? 175, 200?
Oh, 175 Fahrenheit, yeah.
Yeah.
200.
Okay.
I don't like to run at 200 up plus. I sort of try to do a dyno pull at 180 Fahrenheit on the oil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed when I'm dynoing this before, you make a few pulls with it full block. I mean, that oil's getting hot.
Yeah.
And I don't like running pulls when it's, 220, 225. I mean, to me, that's just too hot.
Yes,
You gotta,
definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you've got everything monitored, like because NASCAR run at, 220 water and 220 oil. Or 240
right.
oil.
Pounds of oil pressure.
All day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I did dyno a NASCAR motor once, and you're going to laugh. It was making 725 horsepower back then.
Wow.
It was a Robert Yates motor.
Okay.
The guy was involved with BP. Now, they turned up with their own oil. We done 3 power runs. I think it was 180, 190, and 200 Fahrenheit on our oil.
Okay.
We dumped the oil, put their oil in, and done exactly 3 runs again. The motor made 10, 15 horsepower more at every pull. And at every oil temperature, it had more oil pressure.
Wow.
And they drained the oil and took it with them. We weren't allowed to keep it.
Why? They didn't want you to analyze it, send it out,
No,
and get it.
no. They took the oil away and they said they were going to analyze it. And then he was given that oil to race.
Okay.
That was that was pretty cool oil. That was it was like water, so it didn't look like a 2050. It looked like a 530.
Okay.
But it had more oil pressure at every temperature than what the normal stuff had.
Wow.
And it made more power. It had more vacuum, more ring seal. So there's oils and then there's oils.
Right.
Yeah. So it was definitely something was going on.
But okay, so we talked about oil. What about oil pans? What sucks about Fords, at least over here, and I'm pretty sure like your XD and maybe the XY stuff, the Falcons, they still have a front sump pan, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what I'm sending my Cougar now. It's at the chassis shop now, getting custom 2-inch headers to match those heads that Darren did,
Yes.
and a rack and pinion unit so I can run a rear sump pan.
Okay. Well, I've never had a problem with a front sump pan.
Okay.
Yeah,
How many quarts?
usually 8, 9 quarts.
Yep, I'm right there. 9 quarts, man.
Yep. So my Capri has an oil pan. It's a rear pan.
Yep.
And it goes up over the cross member and the steering.
Okay.
And then the oil pump is in the front. Now, as soon as you put an oil pan on that, on a motor like that, like 440 cubes, I always noticed there was oil getting past the rings. So it's having a problem in that front section getting over the rail, over the cross member and all that.
Okay.
So whatever's happening in there, it's just a whirlwind. So you can see it in the intake manifold. You can see it on the plugs. And then you take the pan off and you put a Cleveland style pan on it on the dyno, a front pan. And then those cylinders that were affected aren't affected anymore.
Well, to me, then it's the oil level's too high, or the windage from the crank spinning is drawing it up.
Yeah, but
right?
The problem is you start running less oil, and even with an accumulator, you start running out of oil pressure going across the finish line.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay.
It's a juggling act.
The sump is just it's not deep enough for that.
So it's either another 2 inches deeper sump. Now you have road clearance issues. So, but now, because I've gone twin turbo, I'm making the pan wider.
Okay.
So I don't need to necessarily worry about the bottom. It's going to be wider because there's no pipes going down there anymore.
Got it.
So
Check that. Now you saw those giant wheel stands, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens when you land with a front sump pan.
Yeah, holy Jesus. Yep. Yes. Yeah, we've done some wheel stands, don't you worry.
Yeah, I did that. I fixed everything. Went back 2 weeks later, did it again.
Oh, no.
Then I learned that I needed better front shocks.
Yeah. You need to keep the front end on the ground and go forward.
Hell yeah. So definitely a front sump's not a bad deal as long as you can get the control of the oil, either
Yes.
with baffling,
Yep.
windage tray or something. Now we had talked about this before. You found horsepower in a windage tray or a crank scraper, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Also, when we were talking before, I noticed a lot of issues with a front pan and a girdle.
Okay.
So whenever I run a girdle, I get the back of the pan made square. So that it just won't let the oil get past the windage, past the girdle.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Gets caught up in the crank.
It looks like this.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Let me put it in place and I'll show you. So I've never ran a windage tray ever. But it fits onto this stud girdle now.
Yep.
What do you think of that? It's better than nothing, I'd say, right?
Well, they say that. I've never run them as well. And from everything I've seen, at 7,000 RPM, all the oil's going 90 degrees out the side.
Okay.
So what you're doing in the bottom isn't really doing anything. The oil's coming out the side. So it'll be your passenger side.
When it's being flung around by centrifugal force is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
So
why the cutout on the passenger side, a kick out in a pan.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So back in the day when I was back at Rio Morrison in the 90s, they were actually cutting the block away. So they had a pan that was made. Do you know what I mean? They'd cut the block away to allow the sump rail to be lower.
Okay.
To allow the oil to get into the oil pan.
So you're saying the pan rail they would cut?
Yeah. They would cut the block.
Yeah, mill the pan rail on both sides to lower the pan.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to draw it, but yes, exactly that. So the kick out, the sump gasket would start an inch into the block.
Okay.
So if you look at the center line of the crank is usually the center line of the sump.
Sure.
Explain that right? So the oil's coming out and hitting here. So they would lift the sump rail up and have it out here. So the oil would go straight into the oil pan.
So when it would fling out, it would fling and go underneath the pan rail back down in.
Yes, because the pan rail had been lifted up. Can you imagine this is the pan and the oil's hitting here? They lift it up. Mate, they done dyno runs with no oil pan on.
Have they really?
Yep.
Just with regular external sump and just kept pumping oil through it.
And they had like a plastic and everything to direct the oil down into back into the container again.
Sure.
So it didn't make a mess, but they picked up massive amounts of power.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Without the oil pan because of the way the windage works and everything. Yeah. Wow.
So then they were lifting the oil pan rail up into the block, closer to the camshaft.
Wow. That's amazing.
To allow the oil to get out, not hit anything.
Just think the hours of engineering, R&D work for that.
I've seen piles of cylinder heads at Rio Morrison back in the 90s.
Wow.
Just that were brand new.
Yeah.
That were just wasted now. Yep. Melt them down and start again.
So I'd like to recap. We'll kind of recap. With what you like to do is basically just put lifter bore bushings in, put a 3,000 cap down the side of the oiler on the lifter.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
Standard volume pump, nothing else.
That's it.
Okay, right bearing clearance.
Make it basic.
And we talked about oil, what you like. What about oil pressure? Is there a number that you say, oh, I'd like to see, 70 pounds? I mean, everything I've ever built is always in between about 70 and 78. But yeah, so we talked about the oiling aspect, bearing clearances, and oil pressure. Like I always say, oh, I'd like to see 75, 72, 78. And that's usually right where my motors run, right in that area.
Yes. On a big horsepower engine and a customer you're sending out, you don't want to see him back again.
Yep.
10 pounds per 1,000.
Okay. Just like the old rule of thumb.
It's the old rule of thumb. I used to run as low as sort of 60.
Okay.
With 14, 16 inches of vacuum in the pan. So really 75, but it was showing 60. And that was making 1,300 on nitrous.
Sure.
But you'd always see the bearings struggling. But you'd make an extra 20.
Okay. Okay.
So then when I upped the oil pump pressure, back the vacuum off, you'd lose your 20 horsepower, but the bearings would come out like brand new again. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a give or take.
Yeah, so if you want to send someone out and you don't want them back, yeah, I like to see at least 70, 75.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
In the low 60s, it was always a problem.
Got it. Perfect.
You're always seeing main bearings a little bit scuffed, rod bearings hurting a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's definitely hard.
What do you think about a stock Cleveland oiling for the average guy with a street car, 600 horse? If he's not going more than 6,500, he doesn't really need much for an oiling system, in your opinion.
Don't touch it.
Yep. What do you think it's good? 68?
Easy. It's the pan. It's not the oil system. It's the pan.
That's what I always heard. You got to have a deep pan, 9 quart.
Once you got a good pan, most of your problems are gone.
Okay. Okay.
So as long as you got a good pan and everything, you're laughing.
Got it. I like it.
Problem.
Perfect.
Remember, basic.
It's a lot, though, for someone to put a motor together and say, yeah, I got these bushings in the lifters, and all I'm going to do is a 3,000 screw on that oiling hole. Is that going to be enough? You know what I mean? People,
yes. Yep.
That's a worry.
I always find, as long as you can spin it up with a drill or spin it up with a speed brace and you get oil out the rockers, you won't.
Okay.
Yep. If I'm going to the dyno or if I'm giving you your motor back, I will not let it leave the shop until there's oil coming out the rockers when it's cold.
Got it.
That's how I always make sure, and then I've never had a problem.
Perfect. All right.
Yep.
But I'm up to like 6,000 subscribers.
Wow.
What to me that's a lot.
Yeah, I've had people.
Really?
Yeah, saying they watch your videos and they go, far out, he mentioned you, Tricky. Yeah, that's my mate from America. It's all right.
I don't want him ringing you off the wall now.
No. You just, what we might do is we can do another one and I'll get some cylinder heads.
Oh, yeah, and I'll put it together. This will be a good episode because people are dying to hear this stuff. No one knows. They don't really know all about the Cleveland, the oil system. They don't know about they're just not a popular motor anymore. They're still running it like crazy. Here, it's just, there's me and about 10 other guys.
Yeah, wow. Okay. And all the rest are what, using Windsors?
Yeah. Wow. But there's a following. I mean, there's a huge following of just people that just run Cleveland's, man. I'm talking thousands.
Wow. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, you're definitely getting a name because everyone's seeing your videos, which is good.
Nice.
So every time you put a video up, tag me in it or whatever, because then more people get to see it.
Sure.
Yeah, and it helps your channel out.
Perfect.
And then when I come over there, I got somewhere to sleep in the garage with all those cylinder heads.
So, guys, there's the interview that you saw with Tricky, the myth, the man, and the legend.
Oh, far out.
But we're going to talk again. He's going to get some cylinder heads, and we're going to talk again about some of his cylinder heads and about some aspects of flow, just some basic stuff that you guys might want to know. Cylinder heads like you are important. So I don't know who this is going to impact or who's going to take something from this, but I try to cover it all so we're not being too complicated and not being too basic. So we're going to talk about that on another interview. I appreciate you taking the time, Tricky. I really do. It's
Mate,
been real talk.
More than welcome, Tim. Anytime.
And I hope that your phone's not ringing too much.
I put it on silent so they didn't bother us.
Because people are calling him because we've been mentioning this on the channel. So after this, the next people I'm getting hopefully is Darren, once I catch up with him because he's got his new job at BES.
Yep.
So I'm going to do an interview with him. I got a couple of old Pro Stock guys. I talked to, do you remember Kuntz, Jim Kuntz?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I made the most power with a small block back in the day with their cylinder heads.
Did you really?
Yeah, their castings, yes.
What were they? What did they
That
have?
was the Brodex Neil.
Yes. Okay. He did that? He did that cylinder head?
Yeah, he was involved in that, yes.
I mean, that Brodex Neil, that was like a C302B head almost for a Ford.
A lot better. More towards your Blue Thunders. Was more like that motor made. That was back in the day. That was 919. That was 25 years ago. Jason and I did that.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 years ago, something like that.
Time's flying, man.
Yep.
You know.
So they were a good cylinder head. Now we do it with bloody single carburetor.
Crazy.
The last one.
Heads.
Last one we did, we done my latest CHI port. I done a manifold for Jace, and he rang me when I was in America to wake me up because it made 907 or something.
Nice.
And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think the dyno's out." He goes, "Yeah, so do I." So he left it on there till I got back from PRI.
Yeah.
And we checked the calibration. It was perfect.
Wow.
It just made the power. It was 450 cubes and it made 909 or 911. And it was, crystal. It was beautiful motor. Nice steel.
Nice.
So, now we're doing it with single carb. Before we had twin carbs, sheet metal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So things have come a long way. That's for sure.
Well, that'll be part 2. We'll talk about your race heads, what you got out there.
Yep.
You know, Higgins maybe, Scott Cooks, kind of put them on the table and kind of talk about them a little and see what's out there.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Good talking to you.